All right, this is both an NFL and a 49ers update. Actually, significant news on the league-wide level. Not really common on June 27th. It is the dead period, but that big NFL Direct TV lawsuit, there's a verdict. There's not a final ruling here because we're going to have appeals, but a federal judge in California has found the NFL liable and ordered it to pay $4 billion in residential class damages and $96 million in commercial class damages in the Sunday ticket case. Key words here, the NFL is appealing the decision. But I think that the class action lawsuit, which by the way, this date traces all the way back to a bar in San Francisco trying to sue the NFL, the Mucky Duck in the Inner Sunset. Years ago, the Mucky Duck tried to sue the NFL. This is over antitrust allegations regarding DirecTV and the way that the NFL distributes its product on DirecTV. But anyway, that lawsuit was tossed out. Then the Ninth Circuit Court in San Francisco brought the lawsuit back, allowed it to come back, and it came back as a class action. So something that actually started in San Francisco and might apply to the 49ers, might affect the 49ers at some point in the future, because this thing was initially a $6 billion lawsuit. $4.7 billion is what the NFL is going to have to pay now if they don't get that reduced on appeal. But basically, since the salary cap in the NFL is tied to how much money the NFL is bringing in, cash flow of the NFL, the fact that the league is going to potentially be on the hook for a very large payment of $4.7 billion, that could have some financial ramifications down the road. The key, though, is that there will be appeals. That I put appeals in the plural because it's a situation where the league is going to let this drag out as long as possible. Have more from Mike here. Of that amount, $96 million goes to the commercial establishments in the class, like the Mucky Duck, who started the lawsuit. The $4 billion becomes the recovery for residential customers. Under federal antitrust laws, the amount will be trebled to $12.288 billion. At some point, the fact that I didn't go to law school will shine through, and I think it's right now. If we have any lawyers in the audience, what does that mean? The amount will be trebled to $12.288 billion. That's from Mike Florio of PFT Talk. Mike just sent that to me. Mike Ortaza sent that to me. That Mike Florio wrote what I just said. But anyway, the initial number that we heard was $4.7 billion, trebled to $2.28 billion. Either way, we're dealing with a lot of money. We'll also be dealing with a lot of appeals in this case. But the main thing to remember on a big picture level is that the salary cap and the size of it, and the 49ers, with all the star players that they have, they're relying on the salary cap to consistently rise year after year. They're pushing a lot of these payments against the cap into the future. And they're, as long as the cap continues growing along with league revenue, and it grew a lot this past season with the Taylor Swift effect and with all these new streaming deals, as long as it continues growing, the 49ers will have a little problem keeping their A-list core under the salary cap. You can kind of surf that wave with the signing bonuses and the option bonuses that prorate against the salary cap and take out that zero interest loan. But things get a little bit more tricky, as they did in 2021 when the 49ers and the NFL, the entire league, had to deal with the cap crunch following that COVID year where revenue went down. So if the 49ers continue moving forward with their current strategy, there is the potential of the NFL not having as high of a salary cap at some point if the league is going to owe a whole bunch of money in this class action lawsuit. Again, you could see the news here. This is the tweet from Ari Meroff. A federal judge in California has found the NFL liable and ordered it to pay $4 billion in residential class damages and $96 million in commercial class damages. And the number that I'm seeing around is $4.7 billion in totality, plus what Mike just said, trebled to $12.28 billion. Wonder if we do have any lawyers in the crowd here. And it is trebled, right, Mike? Trebled, not tripled. Maybe it was a misspelling from Florio. Because 12.28 billion would be roughly. No, he says it's trebled. This is going to be like that Arson Judge tweet. What the hell does trebled mean? Like he says it means make or become 3 times as large or numerous. So why the hell don't they just say tripled? You law school people, you guys are a confusing bunch. So tripled, trebled, same thing, means make 3 times as large or numerous because of federal antitrust laws, which triple the punishment, which would mean not just 4.7 billion that you see on the screen, which would mean over $12 billion. Anyway, I think the main thing to say here is there will be appeals. This is something that we could keep an eye on. I do think that it's funny that this initially started with a San Francisco sports bar filing suit against the NFL, the Mucky Duck. Ultimately, too, this might change how the NFL has to distribute football. There might ultimately become an a la carte option. Like you could buy individual teams in your Sunday ticket, which is what fans, I think a lot of fans have long wanted, but the NFL has wanted to keep Sunday ticket as a premium product. Obviously, the ruling in this lawsuit suggests that they may not be able to continue doing that, but the appeals are going to stand in the way of a different future and what we have right now. So we'll see. Charles Simon treble damages, triple the amount of compensation a plaintiff receives, or triple the number of fines a defendant must pay. Oh, that's what Charles Simon said on the chat. Okay. Mike is texting me. I'm not looking at the chat right now. Charles Simon says, read above, all caps. There it is. Treble damages, triple the amount of compensation a plaintiff receives, or triples this number of fines a defendant must pay. I stand by my original point that we could have just said triple and spared ourselves the confusion. This is from Dale. I know Dale. I met him in a coffee shop in San Francisco. Triple, treble equals trouble. It's the way that we can put it. All right, cool. We're going to move on. That's the key words are right here. There will be appeals. So we'll see how this progresses. The NFL is going to draw this out for as long as it can. And I don't think this is going to affect the salary cap at any point here in the very near future. There's a thing called appeal bond. I know that if the NFL appeals, they're going to have to put some of this money up, in a sort of escrow as the type of bond pending appeal. It doesn't have to be paid to anybody. Now, congratulations those of you who had DirecTV, because this was a class action lawsuit. So people who had DirecTV at some point over the past several years, you'll be able to probably cash in on a payment. But I don't think that payment is going to be coming in anytime soon if it's just going to be held up in appeal bond. So let's let the legal process play out and figure this out as we move forward. But there will be appeals. The size of the salary cap is tied to NFL revenue. So it is in NFL teams' interest to pay attention to the league's cash flow. Take a look at what Greg Olsen said about Brock Purdy. This is tight end U. This is courtesy of Jennifer Lee Chan, who is a reporter for NBC Sports Bay Area, does a great job. Greg Olsen said, Brian Griese, who's the 49ers quarterbacks coach, told me last year that Purdy's magic wand, his secret weapon, is he's the fastest processor I've ever been around. Brian Griese was at Michigan around the same time Tom Brady was there. Now, that was before Brady became Brady. But my point is that Brian Griese's been around a lot of really good quarterbacks. He succeeded John Elway in Denver. He's been an analyst on TV. That was his job before this. So he was around the whole league seeing quarterbacks, being able to talk to them. Now he's the quarterbacks coach of the 49ers. We know and have known that Brock Purdy has extremely quick reflexes. He has vision of the field that is unlike most 23, now 24-year-old quarterbacks. But this compliment right here from Greg Olsen takes it up another notch. And I think that the more that we see Brock Purdy and the more that people who actually know the game talk about him, the better appreciation there should be from the more casual fans, the more casual media members of what Brock Purdy is doing. I had the State of the 49ers quarterback edition up the other day, and it's worth putting up again right now because what we're seeing from Brock Purdy is sensational. It's historically good for a young quarterback. We've never seen this kind of start statistically in NFL history. And it's so good that we can actually look at Hall of Famers who have played over the past 20 years and compare Brock Purdy's stats to theirs. And Purdy's numbers actually stack up really well against 2004 Peyton Manning. That's Peyton's best season. 2007 Tom Brady. That's Brady's best season statistically. 2009 Drew Brees. 2011 Aaron Rodgers. 2016 Matt Ryan. 2018 Patrick Mahomes. Those are the best seasons statistically of all these guys who are going to be in the Hall of Fame. Maybe not Matt Ryan, but the vast majority of these guys are Hall of Fame locks, including Patrick Mahomes, who still isn't 30 years old yet. But Brock Purdy's best season so far, which is his only full season, stacks up extremely well statistically against all of those, especially in adjusted net yards per attempt. Now, there's still meat left on the bone for Brock Purdy to be able to improve, and think it's about eliminating some of the turnovers where he lost about the same amount of expected points per game as Drew Brees in 2009. You can see it shaded in red here. But that can make Purdy's efficiency even better. So you go back to what Greg Olsen said right here. His secret weapon is that he's the fastest processor I've ever been around. So you combine this with this, the fact that Brock Purdy is being compared and should be compared statistically to Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, prime Matt Ryan, and Patrick Mahomes. He's earned those comparisons with the product that he's put onto the field. And the reason that he has put that product onto the field is primarily because of how fast he processes it. Greg Olsen, I think, hit the nail on the head. Now, the fast processing time, that's not just a cerebral trait. Fast processing time is going to connect to reaction time. I think that Brock Purdy's got some quick twitch muscles. We talk about the 10-yard split. His ability to see things develop, his ability to sense things. He's got great reflexes. That's something that goes back to his Iowa State days that I'll tell you guys about a little bit later. But has awesome reflexes. He's worked on them since college. He's able to get that first step, the first three steps, manipulate the pocket. His movement is elite within the pocket, but his ability to see downfield is also elite. His ability to understand coverages, put the football where it's supposed to go, is at the top of the game. Wayne Gretzky once said that, I'm not trying to skate to where the puck is. I want to skate to where the puck is going to be. In many ways, playing quarterback necessitates that type of feel for the game, especially if you're at one of these games in person and the 49ers have a couple crossing receivers and the defense is playing the 49ers patterns fairly well, but there might be a little bit of a gap for Juwan Jennings. There might be a little bit of a gap for somebody like Brandon Aiyuk. And Purdy has to find that gap, and he often has to find that gap before the receiver is technically open. And he often has to deliver the pass over the head or the outstretched arms of a linebacker in front of a defensive back. He often has to put it in a spot that only that particular receiver can get it. The play that I'm thinking of is the crosser against the Green Bay Packers to Juwan Jennings. That was a work of art. Brock Purdy's accuracy, which is obviously a physical trait, combines with his mental processing to create a quarterback who has delivered elite results whenever he's been on an NFL field so far. It is absolutely fair to compare Brock Purdy to some of these guys, which is staggering just to be able to say that in its own right. I also compared Purdy to every single 49ers quarterback of the Kyle Shanahan era. And this one's really good because we see Jimmy Garoppolo's 2017, which was some elite football, which earned him a lot of money, right? The 5-game stretch there. That had been the standard for 49ers quarterbacks across adjusted net yards per attempt, DVOA, success rate, turnover, EPA per game. Now, he wasn't as good in that category. Garoppolo threw some picks over those games, but it still wasn't bad enough to hurt the number one rankings he had elsewhere. Completion percentage over expectation. That had been a standard that no 49ers quarterback had been able to attain until Brock Purdy did in 2023. He was significantly better from 2022 moving to 2023. 42.5% DVOA. The success rate, 56%, even higher than Garoppolo's back in 2017. I mean, these statistics, and you see Jimmy put up good numbers in 22, put up good numbers in 21. 2019, led the 49ers to the Super Bowl. Garoppolo was good. Purdy is elite. That's the simplest way to put this. And Garoppolo, although he was good, also wasn't consistently healthy. They just got a full season from Brock Purdy. He sat out that last game against the Rams, but you get the idea. Anyway, Olsen on Purdy, good stuff. I mean, it's something we've talked about a lot, but to hear it from a respected voice like Greg Olsen, I think that really solidifies things. He did a good job on Fox's number one broadcasting team. Now, it's going to be Tom Brady. Speaking of the man himself, Tom Brady, he's going to be the number one broadcaster, the number one color commentator alongside Kevin Burkhardt moving forward. And if you want some Brock Purdy trivia, he's a rookie that beat Tom Brady in his first career start against the Bucs back in 2022. Anyway, it's time for a 49ers Q&A. 6:41 here in Nashville, 4:41 back on the West Coast. And that means it's time to answer your questions. Charles is a contract negotiator, which is why he knows a little bit of legal info, like damages in the case of the NFL. Well, we thank Charles for chiming in. I wasn't reading the comment section as I was talking, but hopefully I didn't sound like a complete idiot. Was able to cover the news of the lawsuit. And I got appeal bond, right? I know that that's a correct term, but Charles, our resident contract negotiator, maybe he can tell us how much money Brandon Aiyuk is going to end up signing for. But we applaud Charles. Great info. So I'm waiting for your questions. Well, we congratulate Charles. This is a good one. We're going to have a show coming out about this a little bit later this offseason in July. But Mike, this is not a question. This is something I was just talking about, though, not on air. So we'll talk about it now. The threat of Brock Purdy's legs is more important than his actual running ability. Let that soak in for a bit. The very reason that the 49ers drafted Trey Lance was because they thought he was going to be able to do it all. They thought that he was going to be able to throw, and that was going to be the primary aspect of his job, actually play quarterback from the pocket. But there was a sense from Kyle Shanahan that the threat of Trey Lance's legs would allow the 49ers to play 11 on 10. It would allow the 49ers to freeze at least one defender and had to respect the threat of running. I think that Brock Purdy has the ability to keep defenses honest in that way. So in a roundabout way, Kyle Shanahan is going to get, and has already gotten, Would he want it with Trey Lance at pick number 3 in 2021? Instead, he got it with pick number 262 in 2022. You don't have to run Brock Purdy into the ground, but the threat of him taking off with that fast burst, that's enough to, just one of those plays. If that's on tape, that creates a little bit of second guessing in the defense, and that can open up things in the pass game. And by extension, that could keep Brock Purdy safer in the pass game because you're taking the air out of an opposing pass rush. You run the football with your running backs to take the air out of a pass rush because you're keeping defenses on their heels. They can't pin their ears back and just focus on taking the quarterback's head off. Well, in much the same way, a quarterback's ability to run can also take some steam out of a pass rush. I think it's a great point from Mike. Charles Simon's got a prediction for Brandon Aiyuk. 28.5 million APY, 59 million guaranteed. Now, do you think it's going to be, is that total guarantees or is that fully guaranteed money? That would be a lot of fully guaranteed money. I predicted about 52 million fully guaranteed, which is about what Tyreek Hill has for Brandon Aiyuk. I would think that negotiations are probably somewhere in the 40s, low 40s right now, given the fact that Brandon Aiyuk and the 49ers don't seem to be particularly close to a deal right now. So maybe this gets up into the high 40s. I don't know. I don't know what Charles is thinking, but we'll see. Will the 49ers extend anyone else besides Brandon Aiyuk this offseason? Deommodore Lenoir seems like he'd be a good candidate for an earlier extension. That's the one I keep on thinking of. So I remember Dre Greenlaw got extended along with Mitch Wishnowsky before the 2022 season started. So potentially we see something like that. And I would find Deommodore Lenoir to be in a similar caliber of player as a Dre Greenlaw. So the timing could work in a similar fashion. Steve thinks it's going to be a $50 million full guarantee for Brandon Aiyuk. The full guarantees are how a team can control the cap hit better because you spread the money out against the salary cap up to 5 years. So in the case of Brandon Ayuk's contract, I could show you my prediction since we're already talking about it right now. I actually made the whole table and stuff in my article for The Athletic. This is already like 3 months ago. But I had the 49ers giving him about 52 million fully guaranteed, $30 million signing bonus, and then a guaranteed option bonus of 20 million. And as you can see, the cap hits of the $30 million signing bonus are spread out over 5 years by NFL rule. So that's $6 million a year. And the $20 million option bonus kicks in 2025, 5 years with a void year through 2029, $4 million a year. So with this contract structure, because you're willing to give Brandon Aiyuk the guaranteed money, you can actually keep his cap hits low in the near term. I have 8.1 million for 2024 if they can get this done. Invader 49ers says that Purdy is a rare processor that comes around once every 10 years. It is so hard to play quarterback in the NFL. Once you have a guy that can do it at Purdy's level, he's worth his weight in gold. The ability to process, I think, wouldn't be easy for the average human without a defense on the field. And the 49ers like running stuff, light practice sessions, 7-on-7, without a pass rush. They just want to see how well their quarterbacks process. I think that's the first facet of the game where Brock Purdy really impressed them. They want to see how quickly he can move from read to read, how he can scan the field, how he's seeing plays develop. But when it starts to happen with the defense flying around and the pass rush there ready to hurt him, I mean, Purdy, we've seen him injured before, seen a severe injury, that elbow injury. When that's happening and he still has to process and he still does it at an elite level, yes, you can start saying stuff like this that's written at the bottom of the screen. Question about what Brock Purdy's next contract might look like. He says that might depend on if they go back to the Super Bowl or even if they win the Super Bowl. Wandering minds want to know. I think a lot of people want to know. But I mean, if the efficiency is something like this for Brock Purdy, and this is another good one. This is from Field Vision, which is the new startup. I've been using a lot of their stuff. Get it up on the screen. This kind of efficiency, I mean, he was number 1 in the league when blitzed, number 6 when pressured, number 7 when hit. Obviously, he's at the top from a clean pocket last year. He just didn't get as many of those, but he was the most efficient quarterback in the league. If he can do this again, and this was going to go hand in hand with the comparisons with Brady, with Manning and their best years. If he can put up more elite level efficiency, he might become the first $60 million guy annually. Now, it depends on who else signs. I can't wait to see what Tua Tagovailoa goes for. That's going to be a hot button issue in Miami. That could help set some other precedent. I don't think he's nearly as good as Brock Purdy as a quarterback, but 60 million, I think, isn't out of the question if we're just dealing in terms of APY. But there is you're right. There is an absolute hinge point this year. There's so much pressure on Brock Purdy, on the 49ers, not just from the Super Bowl angle, but from the contract angle. I mean, legacies are on the line. We got a Purdy is greater than Breeze take. Well, I could only say one thing about this, and that's data-based. And I know that Purdy's been compared to Drew Brees, and I know that he's been compared to Russell Wilson in his prime. The numbers tell us Drew Brees' best season statistically was 2009. Brock Purdy in his best season statistically, very young career, has a higher adjusted net yards per attempt than Drew Brees did in 09, 9.01 to 8.31. Has a higher DVOA than Drew Brees did in 2009, 42.5% to 36.7%. Has a higher success rate than Drew Brees did, 56% to 54%. Has a nearly identical turnover loss, minus 3.9 points per game for Drew Brees, minus 4 points per game for Purdy. Has a slightly lower completion percentage over expectation, 7.5% for Brees, 5.4% for Purdy, and has a bit lower QBR than Drew Brees, but a very comparable statistical profile. Ultimately, Drew Brees earned his stripes not just because of 2009, but because of how consistent he was over the course of his NFL career. He was good for a long time. Brock Purdy has not had the chance to be good for that long yet. He's 24 years old. So Purdy's best performance in some ways statistically has been better than Drew Brees' best performance, but it is way too soon to say that he's better than Drew Brees because longevity is part of this equation. Dak Prescott also on the docket for a contract. Charles asks, are Brock Purdy's deep middle numbers not as good due to his height or lack thereof? That's a good question. If you look deep middle, if you look deep left, that is a really, really interesting theory to me. Deep left against the blitz, second against pressure, seventh. Deep right against the blitz, first against pressure, fourth. Deep middle, 40th against the blitz, 20th against pressure in general. Wow. But you could say that, but intermediate middle, he's awesome. So, and intermediate middle, that was like the Kittle throw against the blitz against Miami in Purdy's debut, right? When Jalen Phillips came in there and lit him up. Third down, Kittle over the middle. So Purdy didn't really need to see Kittle to hit him on that throw. That blitz came on him fast. So he's better over the middle of the field, intermediate passes, better outside the numbers on deep passes. Short throws, probably a Christian McCaffrey effect. McCaffrey loves operating to the left, whether it be running behind Trent Williams or, maybe when they disguise a run, then he splits open for a pass. That's helped Purdy be really, really efficient on the left side of the field. This is true. Russell Wilson had always been bad in the middle of the field, while he was always great on bombs. And that, I think, is a height issue for Russell Wilson. Wilson's intermediate and short game. I mean, you remember in the Super Bowl, the short game, well, Malcolm Butler intercepted in the past, but Wilson was not good on the standard scripted timing stuff from the pocket, generally over the middle of the field. And I think a lot of it had to do with lack of height in Seattle. But he was perfect downfield. I mean, at his prime, Russell Wilson's deep ball was second to no one's. And that included throws over the middle. The walk-off in the NFC Championship against the Packers, the Doug Baldwin, that was a deep pass over the middle. So it's interesting because with Purdy, you've got a little bit of the inverse here. Deep over the middle hasn't been good. Now deep to the sides has been good, but the intermediate passes have also been very good, unlike Russell Wilson. Shout out to my friend Jack. I'm heading to London in a couple days. He just sent me the definitive London public transit tour. We might have to do that. Oh, this is good. This is good. There's a couple good recommendations. Going to be in England here for a few days. It's going to be fun. Then we have another surprise stop on the next trip. This is a good question. It'll be very interesting. It's not a question. It's a theory. It'll be interesting to see how Mike McDonald structures his defense when he faces Purdy and the 49ers in Seattle. Is that Seattle game coming first up there? I think so. Yeah, that's going to be on Fleet Week, but before the weekend. It's going to be on the Thursday in October. And then we will probably cover a 49ers Seahawks game at Levi's. Is that coming up in December, November? I don't remember. I'm going to have to look at the schedule. You will get food updates from London. We were there. This is the second time I'm going to London in a couple months, actually. And we were there in May. I'm trying to see if I still have a video. I probably do. I have to do a better job naming my videos so I can toss them up onto the screen here. But anyway, I'll probably play that in a little bit. I was hoping the 49ers were going to get an international game in London so I could really dive into it on the channel. But it's June, moving into July. If there's ever a time to talk about other stuff, and I always talk about other stuff, I think it keeps things more interesting. But if there ever was a time, it certainly is right now. Is Dominic Purdy enough to improve the O-line play this season? Well, here's what I know. I know that he was at Central Missouri, D2 player, so low level of football relative to where he went after that. He transferred to Kansas, D1. That is the SEC, not the SEC, it's the Big 12, but it's high-level D1 football. It's a big jump from where he was at Central Missouri, and he didn't allow a single sack at Kansas over 2 years. I talked to Lance Leopold, who is Kansas's head coach, and he said that the transition was amongst the most impressive that he's seen. You don't just have that. A D2 guy show up on a D1 campus, grab a starting position along the offensive line, and then not allow a sack over the course of his time at the D1 school. So that to me is notable from Dominic Purdy. 2, he's a better pass protector than he is a run blocker at this point, which is a change. In the past, the 49ers had always gone for the run blockers, Mike McGlinchey, over the pass protectors. But this offense has evolved. I would argue it's a pass-first offense now, although balance is critical. That's the end of the game for the 49ers. Balance, balance, balance. But they passed way more than they ran in the playoffs. 3 quarters of the season, 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 3 quarters of They probably going to have 2 high-priced receivers on this roster this season with Brandon Aiyuk and Deebo Samuel. They've just drafted Ricky Pearsall into that receiver room. They re-signed Jawan Jennings. They've got Kittle. They've got McCaffrey. I mean, you just look at this offense and you say, okay, pass protection is becoming increasingly important for the 49ers. And they need to improve it. It wasn't great last year. It wasn't good. I think it was bad on the interior. So Dominic Purdy might be able to slot in with his pass protection forward skill set at that right guard position. I think he's enough to improve the depth, and the depth is very important. It's mandatory to a Super Bowl run. You need 7, 8 quality offensive linemen. 5 is not going to do it with injuries in the long season. But the main question is, can he improve the starting 5 sooner rather than later? Stay tuned during training camp. Right tackle, I mean, any tackle situation is going to be hard to improve without a premium draft pick. Keep in mind that Colton McKivitz has only started 1 season in the NFL. They think that McKivitz can take a stride this year, just given the relative lack of experience. They've also, I think, bolstered swing tackle. Brandon Parker's in the building. Chris Hubbard's in the building. Those are 2 veterans who have played some good football. Injury concerns, obviously, but they're not penciled in to be starters. McKivitz was durable last year. That was important for the 49ers. And that swing tackle, I mean, also Dominic Purdy ultimately might give the 49ers some reps at tackle. We'll see. But they saw much more logical path to improvement at guard specifically than they did tackle. Just because of the physical parameters that you need for a tackle in this system is going to be a high chance of success. Generally, those guys are off the board after early in the first round. Unfortunately for the 49ers, and maybe fortunately for the 49ers, they haven't been a bad enough football team to be picking high enough to get some of these tackles that might really fit, that are good enough. If there's one, true regret that they might have drafting over the past few years, after they traded DeForest Buckner, they got a first-round pick. They went position for position in trying to replace Buckner. They decided to go with Javon Kinlaw instead of going with who I thought was the best player available, and that was Tristan Wirfs. That would have been a tackle who could have slotted into the 49ers position of need there. That was the same offseason that they traded for Trent Williams. Imagine them drafting Wirfs and trading for Trent Williams in the same offseason. Would have definitely put a different look on the situation now. But, I mean, it's one of those things where the 49ers have hit way more often than they've missed on their personnel acquisitions. That's why they have the strongest roster in football. And 100% success rate is unrealistic. I think in general, their process has been really, really impressive. And that's why they've seen the amount of success that they have over the past several seasons. That's it for me. That was the 49ers Q&A. Went through the NFL news and then the 49ers Q&A news. So everybody, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. We'll talk to you very soon.